When you install like a state-of-the-art security system in your house, you expect it to do one very specific thing, right? Keep the bad guys out.
Right. I mean, it's purely functional. It establishes a perimeter.
Exactly. It's supposed to make you feel safe. But imagine if you woke up one day and that same system had gotten, well, a little too aggressive.
Meaning what exactly?
Like, imagine if it started locking you out of your own house every time you tried to bring in new furniture. Or, I don't know, upgrade the locks, you try to make your house better, and the alarm just starts blaring. Suddenly, it goes from being your protector to essentially your jailer.
Oh, I see. Because the system doesn't actually understand the concept of better. It literally only understands the original parameters it was programmed with. So yeah,
Right.
the system itself becomes the prison.
And that brings us to the core of today's deep dive. What if human culture has a security system exactly like that?
A cultural security system.
Yeah, one that is actively, aggressively trying to lock us out of our own evolutionary future. So today, we are unpacking a highly provocative, just incredibly dense philosophical treatise. It is entirely about narrative engineering.
Right, and specifically, it's making the argument that our culture literally programs us to fear immortality and, well, human transcendence.
It really is a massive, sweeping document. I mean, to make this argument, the author pulls from evolutionary biology, comparative mythology, neuroscience.
Science fiction, too.
Yeah, lots of sci-fi. It's a really bold claim about the hidden architecture of the stories we consume every day. But a quick heads up for you listening before we get into the weeds here.
Yeah, this is important.
This author pulls absolutely no punches. The text contains some really intense, highly polarized, and frankly, occasionally abrasive viewpoints about human evolution, societal norms, and what we might call the biological baseline.
It definitely steps on some toes.
Oh, big time. So our job today isn't to take a side, and we certainly aren't here to endorse this philosophy or, judge the cultural artifacts they critique. We are just acting as your neutral guides, impartially mapping out these fascinating, controversial ideas.
Basically, we are here to dissect the argument and see how the gears turn, not to defend the machine itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. The treatise starts with this really striking, almost violent image. The author claims that society has hammered nails into our consciousness.
Nails into our consciousness.
Yeah, and these cultural nails are designed to keep us trapped within our biological limits.
Well, to really understand what these nails are, we have to look at the overarching philosophical framework the author is operating from, because the text hinges on a very specific concept, which is theotechnocracy.
Theotechnocracy. Okay, that's a heavy, kind of intimidating word. Break that down for us.
It sounds like a mouthful, I know, but the author essentially synthesizes three distinct philosophical streams into one worldview. So first, you have Vedic philosophy, specifically the idea that the individual mind, the Atman, is a direct mirror of the cosmic mind, the Brahman. In this view, it's like it is our inherent cosmic duty to expand our consciousness to match the universe.
Wow, okay. So that's the spiritual side.
Right. Then second, the author folds in Nietzschean ideals, taking the stance that humanity isn't a final destination.
Right, the whole man is a rope thing.
Exactly. Humanity is just a bridge to something higher that must be overcome.
So spiritual expansion meets evolutionary push. What's the third piece?
The third stream is Cosmism, and this is the philosophy of radiant, immortal intelligence. Basically, Cosmism argues that intelligence is fundamentally anti-entropic.
Wait, let me make sure I'm translating that right for everyone. Entropy is the idea that everything in the universe naturally degrades into chaos, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like a sandcastle eventually washing away into a flat beach. So if intelligence is anti-entropic, the author is saying our minds are the universe's ultimate weapon against that decay.
That is a perfect way to phrase it. Biology, flesh, it accepts decay. Intelligence wants to build, expand, conquer death, and restructure the chaos of the universe into perfect order.
Okay, I get it now.
So, theotechnocracy synthesizes all three. You've got the cosmic duty of the Vedas, the evolutionary drive of Nietzsche, and the immortal ambition of Cosmism.
Right, so if that is the ultimate goal of theotechnocracy, to become these radiant, immortal cosmic architects, why are these nails in our consciousness holding us back? Like, if intelligence wants to build the ultimate sandcastle, who keeps knocking it down?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the author traces the origin of these nails all the way back to the Pleistocene epoch.
The Ice Age. Really?
Yeah. To understand our modern cultural software, we have to look at our ancient evolutionary hardware. The text relies heavily on two scientific concepts here. Evolutionary biologist Robert Shriver's theory of reciprocal altruism
Yeah, okay.
and anthropologist Robin Dunbar's number.
Oh, I'm familiar with Dunbar's number. That's the idea that the human brain can only really maintain stable social relationships with about 150 people at a time, right?
Correct. Anything beyond that, and the social cohesion sort of breaks down. So picture a Pleistocene tribe of 150 individuals.
Okay, picturing it.
Resources are incredibly scarce. Survival depends entirely on a delicate, highly predictable balance of cooperation, and that is where Shriver's reciprocal altruism comes in.
Oh, scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Exactly. I share my mammoth meat with you today, assuming you will share your berries with me tomorrow. It's a mathematically balanced social contract.
Okay, I see the setup. So in that environment, what happens if an anomaly appears? Let's say someone is born abnormally strong or abnormally smart or, and I guess this is crucial for this text, they somehow live to be 120 years old while everyone else dies at 35.
Right. Well, in a modern context, we'd call them a prodigy or a medical marvel. But in a tribe of 150, they are a massive existential
Well,
threat.
do they eat too much? Basically. They completely disrupt the resource equilibrium. If one guy lives 3 times as long, he eats 3 times as much over his lifespan. He breaks the predictable social hierarchy.
Wow. Okay.
So the tribe developed a brutal but highly functional survival strategy, the leveling instinct.
The tall poppy gets cut down.
Yes. You eliminate, exile, or publicly shame the overachiever. You hammer down the tall nail. In the Stone Age, suppressing the exceptional individual was quite literally the only way the collective biomass could survive.
Yeah, I love this analogy we were kicking around earlier. It's like we are trying to run a massive, limitless, cloud-based galactic civilization, but we are forced to use the emotional dial-up modem of a caveman.
It perfectly captures the friction the author's talking about. We live in a global civilization of 8 billion people now.
Right.
We have advanced technology, artificial intelligence, and the capacity for post-scarcity. But our brains are still running that Pleistocene software.
Still checking the mammoth meat accounts. Yeah. Biology constantly seeks the homeostasis of the swamp. It wants comfort, averageness, energy conservation.
Okay, I get the evolutionary logic. If you are a caveman, fearing the anomaly keeps you alive. But, I'm pushing back a little here. We aren't hunting mammoths anymore.
True.
So how did a biological urge to share food turn into a modern cultural fear of getting smarter or living longer?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the brain's hardware couldn't just delete a survival instinct that kept us alive for hundreds of thousands of years.
Right. Evolution doesn't work that fast.
Exactly. So when we developed language, we codified that fear into the software of our myths. The source uses a brilliant example from Slavic folklore to illustrate this. The archetype of Koschei the Deathless.
Koschei the Deathless. I know the name. He's basically the classic dark wizard villain, right?
He is, but the text references Vladimir Prop, who is a famous structuralist. He analyzed the grammar of these folktales, and when you really break down the narrative structure of Koschei, his ultimate crime isn't necessarily the specific bad things he does. Yeah. His fundamental crime, the reason the hero is obligated to destroy him, is simply being immortal.
Wow. So he doesn't even have to do anything evil. Just by existing outside the normal biological cycle of birth, aging, and death, he's branded as an ontological threat to the natural order.
Precisely. And notice how the story always ends. The author argues that when the hero slays Koschei, society frames it as a triumphant victory.
Right, the evil wizard is dead. Yay.
But from the perspective of Theotechnocracy, it's a tragic victory for entropy.
Oh, I see.
The normalcy that the hero restores is just the normalcy of the graveyard. It's the collective cheering because the anomaly was dragged back down into carbon decay.
That is so bleak. And the author points out this isn't just confined to fairy tales, does it? There are historical examples of this playing out in real life.
Yes, the text mentions King Ermaneric. He was a historical Gothic king who supposedly lived well over 100 years.
Which was unheard of back then.
Exactly. And the author notes how his sheer physical longevity naturally inspired primitive terror in surrounding tribes.
Like he was a demon or something.
Right. It's the exact same impulse that led to the persecution of medieval alchemists. Anyone seeking the elixir of life or the philosopher's stone was branded as satanic or dealing in dark magic.
Because the collective naturally fears what it cannot biologically match.
Exactly.
So we've moved from the caveman tribe to the mythological campfire. But here's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, a bit uncomfortable. We don't tell stories about Koschei around the fire anymore. But the source argues we are still consuming the exact same narrative engineering on our screens today.
Yes. The modern media, according to this treatise, acts as a global inquisitor. It actively punishes the idea of human transcendence using three specific narrative nails.
And this is where you listening might want to think about the last few movies or shows you binge-watched. Let's walk through how this actually looks when you're sitting on your couch.
Let's do it.
The first nail the author identifies is it's unnatural.
Right. This is rooted in the naturalistic fallacy, the assumption that because something is natural, it is inherently good, and because something is artificial, it is dangerous.
This is pretty common, yeah.
But the author points out a massive hypocrisy in how we apply this. We happily accept unnatural interventions that bring us up to the baseline, things like eyeglasses, penicillin, or pacemakers.
Right. Nobody calls a pacemaker dark magic.
Exactly. But the moment someone proposes a cognitive implant to increase memory or genetic enhancement to stop aging, the narrative suddenly shifts.
It goes from medical miracle to playing God. Like, we accept the technology that fixes us, but we fiercely reject the technology that pushes us past the biological default.
Precisely. And that leads directly to the second nail, which is, you must suffer for your difference.
Right.
The treatise argues that modern pop culture demands an emotional tax on anyone with superior abilities. If you have immense power, the story dictates you must be emotionally crippled by it.
Superhero movies are the ultimate example of this, right?
They are the purest distillation of it. Look at Superman. He's essentially a solar-powered god, a being of immense cosmic potential.
Yeah.
But the narrative forces him to put on glasses and play a clumsy, bumbling clerk just to make the average humans around him feel comfortable.
Oh, wow. Or Iron Man. I mean, he has unbounded genius and creates limitless clean energy, but he is burdened with endless PTSD, panic attacks, and guilt.
Or Spider-Man, whose life must be a constant grinding cycle of personal tragedy, precisely because of his power.
It's like he's not allowed to just be happy and strong.
Exactly. And look at Wanda Maximoff. The moment she truly expands her abilities to manipulate reality itself, the narrative immediately writes her as a villain who has lost her mind and must be stopped.
It's like the culture is saying, we will tolerate your superiority, but only if you promise to be miserable. Which brings us to the third, and maybe the most insidious nail.
Which is, lower yourself to our level.
Also known as tall poppy syndrome.
Right. It's the demand that the superior subject constantly proves their vulnerability or actively surrenders their gifts. The text uses a specific sci-fi show as a prime example of this, Killjoys.
Oh, I remember reading this part. It's all centered around something called the Hullen plasma, right?
Yes. So, in the lore of the show, this green plasma offers practically unlimited lifespan, heightened physical abilities, and massive cognitive expansion.
So it's basically the holy grail of Cosmism.
Exactly. It cures death. But what happens in the narrative? The protagonists of the show make it their entire mission to destroy the plasma, to eradicate the immortality, and return everyone to their frail mortal state.
And the craziest part is the audience is totally engineered to cheer for this. Like, we are sitting there eating popcorn, applauding as the hero destroys the cure for death.
It is wild when you think about it.
I'm struggling with the mechanics here, though. Why does that work on us? Why do we celebrate the destruction of our own potential?
Well, this is where the text brings in neuroscience, specifically citing research by Paul Zak on oxytocin.
Okay, the bonding hormone.
Right. When we consume a narrative, our brains release oxytocin, which chemically bonds us to the protagonists. We physically, chemically feel what they feel.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So when a sympathetic hero destroys the agent of human transcendence, when they blow up the lab or smash the vial of plasma, our brains form a neurochemical association.
Oh, wow. So our biology is literally rewarding us. It says, destroying evolution is a feel-good, heroic act.
It's literal biological programming reinforcing the Pleistocene survival instinct.
You know, reading this section of the source, I was struck by this one analogy the author makes, and it is brutally vivid.
Oh, the monkey analogy.
Yes,
Yeah.
to a philosopher of Cosmism, watching a superhuman character cry on screen because they just want to be a normal, fragile mortal is completely absurd. The author says it would be like a human waking up in the middle of the night, crying, wishing they could devolve, lose the ability to speak, and go throw excrement from a tree just to fit in with a troop of monkeys.
It is a harsh analogy, I know, but it perfectly captures the author's deep frustration with our media. From a theotechnocratic perspective, why would a higher, more complex form of intelligence ever romanticize a lower, more vulnerable state of being?
It's like Stockholm Syndrome on a species-wide level.
Exactly.
But, I mean, this isn't just a film critique. What does this all mean for us today? because the source argues this narrative conditioning isn't just ruining how we write screenplays, it is actively threatening real-world scientific progress.
That is the ultimate crux of the treatise. The plasma from science fiction isn't fiction anymore. The author points out that we have a real-world vanguard of transformation operating right now, and they are facing the exact same inquisition.
Right, let's talk about the real-world agents of transformation, because we're talking about massive paradigm-shifting technologies here. CRISPR, for example.
Right.
We have the ability to edit genes, not just to cure debilitating genetic diseases, but potentially to enhance human resilience.
And Neuralink, alongside other brain-computer interfaces, we are looking at technology that could vastly expand the bandwidth of human memory and cognitive speed.
Yeah.
We're also seeing the rise of advanced nootropics for chemical cognitive enhancement.
And maybe the most controversial one, senolytics. The anti-aging research being championed by geneticists like David Sinclair.
Yes, Sinclair's work is fascinating.
He operates on the premise that aging itself is just a disease, right? Like a breakdown of information at the cellular level that can, theoretically, be cured.
Now, to think about how society and the media react to these real-world breakthroughs, we use the exact same 3 cultural nails.
Oh, yeah, we do.
When Sinclair talks about curing aging, the media publishes panic pieces. The public outcry immediately falls back on the naturalistic fallacy, death gives life meaning, or we shouldn't play God.
Or, my favorite, only the rich will get it, so we should ban it for everyone, which is basically the modern version of cutting down the tall poppy.
Exactly. The author argues that the exact same Pleistocene fear of the anomaly, the terrified caveman trying to protect the tribe's food supply, is being weaponized today against the very technologies that could cure Alzheimer's, eradicate genetic suffering, and expand human consciousness.
The caveman is actively trying to smash the dial-up modem because he doesn't understand what a fiber optic network is.
That's a great way to put it.
So what is the author's solution? Like, if our cultural software is this corrupted, how does Theotechnocracy fix the glitch?
While the author's solution is uncompromising, they argue we must completely abandon this biological guilt and radically embrace Theotechnocracy.
Okay.
The true purpose of intelligence is not to humbly accept decay and die quietly to make room for the next generation. The purpose of intelligence is boundless expansion.
So if you manage to transcend the human baseline, whether through like a neural implant or gene therapy, you shouldn't feel guilty or try to hide it to make mortals comfortable.
Not at all. In fact, Theotechnocracy argues that with immense post-human power comes the ultimate cosmic responsibility.
Okay, so it's not just about being selfish.
Right. If you transcend biological limits, your duty isn't to rule over baseline humans like a tyrant. Your duty is to become a cosmic architect, to structure the chaos of the universe, to fight entropy on a galactic scale.
Man, I see the logic, but it raises a massive question for me. If all our current stories are broken, if every superhero movie and sci-fi show is just caveman propaganda, what does the right narrative actually look like?
Well, this raises an important question, and the author touches on this vision. The right narrative wouldn't be about a terrified hero destroying the plasma or smashing the augmentation.
Right.
It would be a story about managing that immense power responsibly. It would explore the complex ethics of a multidisciplinary society where different biological levels, baseline humans, augmented humans, and artificial intelligences exist in a grand synergy.
A story where transcending the flesh isn't framed as a villainous, unnatural act, but as the ultimate heroic journey.
Yes. A drama of grand synthesis and cosmic engineering, rather than a frantic, fear-driven scramble to return to the mud.
Wow. We have covered an incredible amount of ground today. We started with the harsh mathematical survival instincts of a 150-person tribe in the freezing Pleistocene epoch.
We really did.
We watched that primal instinct mutate into Slavic myths about wizards like Koschei the Deathless, and then morph again into modern pop culture tropes where superheroes basically apologize for their own brilliance.
Yeah, it's a wild trajectory.
And finally, we saw how that exact same narrative engineering is actively pushing back against real-world life-saving tech like CRISPR and brain-computer interfaces today.
The central thesis of the treatise is undeniable in its clarity, whether you agree with it or not. The source argues we are trapped in a narrative prison of our own making, constructed by our own evolutionary past. According to this text, the only way out is a radical embrace of Cosmism and Theotechnocracy.
It is a lot to process, and it challenges almost every piece of media we consume. But I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Lay it on them.
Imagine that tomorrow you are offered a flawless, completely risk-free neural implant, something that required zero recovery time, and instantly gave you 1,000 years of perfect memory, impenetrable physical health, and just boundless cognitive brilliance.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Right? But if you felt a sudden pang of fear or hesitation or a voice in your head saying, that's unnatural, ask yourself, whose fear is that? Is it really yours? Or is it just the ghost of a terrified caveman whispering from a 150-person tribe in the Pleistocene trying to pull you away from the stars and lock you back inside your own security system? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narrative you consume, keep a close eye on those old security systems, and we'll see you next time.